The first presentation will be made by Rebecca Julienne. She had already introduced to her briefly, but let me give you her background. She is a diplomat at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Diaspora of the Republic of Seychelles, specializing in climate diplomacy, ocean governance, sustainable development, and multilateral environment negotiations. She serves as a desk officer for biodiversity beyond national jurisdiction, the African Island States Climate Commission, and the ocean governance portfolios and other ocean governance portfolios supporting Seychelles' engagement in the international processes related to marine conservation, climate action, and sustainable ocean management. Rebecca holds a master's degree in international political economy and completed professional qualifications through the University of Cambridge in key essentials of the Paris Agreement, sustainable development, and the law, and key essentials of wealth economics. Her academic and professional experience has equipped her with expertise in international environmental governance, climate policy, and sustainable development. Rebecca served as the Max Tabiso Edkins Climate Ambassador for the Seychelles and partners with the Center for Multilateral Negotiation Education, promoting climate leadership, strengthening youth capacity for international climate negotiation. Her work focuses on advancing the interests of small island developing states, particularly in climate resilience, ocean sustainability, and international cooperation. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Ms. Rebecca Julienne. Rebecca?
Hi, thank you, Alma. That introduction was rather extensive, I feel. Might have need to shorten it at some point. I will just start sharing my screen. If you can let me
Yes,
know
go
if you
ahead.
can see it. Okay, can you see my screen now?
We see there. Yes, okay, now we see it.
Okay, perfect. All right, so because well, the context of the session today again is if it's lessons in the Seychelles. So I tried to see if I can contextualize where exactly I stand at the nexus of that. Just to note, the Seychelles is a very small country to contextualize, but with a massive ocean space. We have an ocean space that actually is larger than Germany in terms of size. But then you have little islands. So we have all of this ocean space and then around 100,000 people total. And in that 100,000 people, around maybe 20% are GOP holders. So those are foreigners that are working in the Seychelles. So let's say around 90,000 people are actually Seychelles people. So this brings into the forefront, just before I begin, to give a context of the issue of human resources and technical capacity that the Seychelles has, and where we come in to try to get the youth engaged both across ministries in terms of technical expertise, as well as university and secondary level education facilities that exist, which integrates climate change within their syllabuses. But just to contextualize, in 2025, I was both the Max Tabiso Edkins Climate Ambassador for Seychelles. This is from the World Bank and Connect for Climate, as well as the African Union Climate Change Youth Negotiator Ambassador for the Eastern Africa. Now, hang on 1 minute. Let me see if I can. There we go. So just to give a bit of a context of where the nexus lies between the programs that I have been involved with and then how this then bled into the Seychelles already existing educational systems, and how we make sure that each of these climate opportunities and each of these climate learnings and teachings are not just one singular person being given the education, but rather it's a trainer on trainers situation. That's the intent of these programs. So just to give a little bit of a background, the Max Debiso Edkins Climate Ambassador Program, as you can see, was launched in 2021 by the World Bank in collaboration with other NGOs like Connect for Climate. And the intent here was to develop young leaders in climate action, resilience, sustainable development, but to empower them with leadership skills that they could use at grassroots level to innovate and to then lead from that, but also to create leaders within their own grounds. So the application process begins in January, but then you will know that you've been successful in February. So far, it has around 600 ambassadors globally. One moment. And these are the objectives and goals specifically designed for the Max Debiso Edkins Climate Ambassadors. So you have, again, it's targeted at leadership and advocacy skills. You have climate awareness, community-based solutions, which I think is very key when we speak about education, especially in terms of the Seychelles. Global collaboration, all of these must then be able to interact synergetically with each other. And that's one of the things that makes Seychelles very unique in that not only is this a global program, but this also is manifested within the Seychelles system when we speak about education. Yet another reason why I wanted to bring the program to the forefront of this presentation. Right. So what do the ambassadors do basically within the program that I think is worth mentioning here, and which is also good for the participants also listening here today, which then it can be applied at grassroots level. It Just to note, the Max Debiso Edkins Climate Ambassador Program is a series of teachings. It's a 12-week course, and every week you have a lesson that's been given by the director of a particular division from the World Bank. So we've had leading experts from the Climate Finance Department, from the Funding Department, from the NGO Department, and they have different specific teachings that they impart in these particular lessons, from knowing how to identify climate partnerships, how to identify those grassroots engagements that can be then collaborated with through the World Bank or other climate finance bodies like the AFDB or even the IMF. On top of that, this is another thing that the Max Debiso, I think from now on, I'll just call it the MTE cap. That's what we call it. One of the things that the MTE cap also embodies that I think is important for the African continent to also just bandwagon on top of is the fact that it facilitates, if you have a workshop in mind that you would like to implement at grassroots levels, it facilitates these workshops for you. It will give you technical expertise and support. The only thing it doesn't do is give you financial support, but it will teach you how to find these financial supports at grassroots level, at regional level, and at international level, which is one of the key reasons why I advocate for people for especially young people, to apply to the Max Debiso Edkins Climate Ambassador Program. Similarly, they have advocacy campaigns through the networking of climate stakeholders. This one teaches you really how to embody a climate diplomat. And what I mean by that is very often we understand climate change, especially through the young people lens. We think that climate advocates or climate negotiators or climate experts are strictly people who have studied everything to do with climate. They are quantitative people. They've learned the environmental skills. They're science-based. But you will find the majority of the time, each of the actual negotiators or the advocates, they're just a series of people who are experts in their own fields, but have been taught climate change diplomacy and how to negotiate on that plenary, on that plane. So through the UNFCCC. So they teach you then how to embody these particular skills and then be able to replicate that at global level. So the impacts again for the Max Debiso Edkins Ambassador Program has been widely felt, I would say, widely felt in the sense that for each climate ambassador, if you for you to actually graduate from the program, you have to have performed 3 climate actions at national level by the time the program ends. So it starts in February and then it ends. in September. Now, there's a reason why I'm saying this, which then feeds into, again, where this applies for the Seychelles in terms of education, and why there needs to be university to university cross collaboration, why there needs to be education platform on the continent, including small and developing states, but not limited to only certain portions of what we call African states. There are 54 of us, African states, and they're, well, 55 if we count the African Union definition of Africa. And then we have portions, different segmentations. So we'll have the African island states, we'll have the Sahel region, which have their portion, and the Congo Basin. But all of them also, we have to contextualize them in terms of what they're facing. So the littoral states will be facing coastal problems. Those in the Sahel will be facing those in the Congo Basin will be facing deforestation issues. So it's important to contextualize each one of these. So for the key activities, you must, as the climate ambassador, identify those at your jurisdiction level. For myself as the Seychelles, there are some things that I found policy-wise, we have a gap in how we operate. In the sense that ministry to ministry, each one has their vision, each one has their strategies, all in line with the national development strategy. But because each ministry is undercapacitated, going back to what I said earlier about there being limited human resources in the Seychelles, 90,000 people, you can imagine how many technical experts are available in the varying fields that we must have. So with this in mind, you now have to identify which these kinds of issues you have. But for us, we operate in silos. Each ministry, like I said before, have their own individual strategies, but cohesiveness is a bit of an issue. Communication and making sure everything is coherent and aligned and synergetic is one of the issues that we have. So one of the key actions that I wanted to focus on specifically was, how do we bridge that gap? How do we make sure that when we enter international negotiations on climate change, there is a national approach such that all the resources that we do have are being used in the right places. And they don't have to be specifically in the climate change department, but rather in all the departments specific to themselves, but taught how to use those expertise and feed it into climate change negotiations. So those were one of my actions. It's actually up and running at the moment. Now, for the Max dB seconds climate change action, I just wanted to put something here on. The application portal, I've already put it in the slides, and I encourage every young person, it is age restrictive, I must say, but I encourage every young person to have a deep dive about what it really is. But I would like to say that from my cohort, there were 150 of us. I'm the first Seychelles MT Climate Ambassador, I'm very proud to say. And I've encouraged quite a number of other young people to also apply, so that we have one for each year. And each year there are key activities that are done. But I encourage every young person on the continent to also engage, if only because I always like to say, you are at grassroots level. You will know exactly what is missing in terms of awareness, in terms of educational services they have, in terms of capacity building, in terms of technical supports. Most of the time, young people are at the forefront of that. They're experiencing the brunt of it. So to know how to bridge that gap between, oh, what is available and what can I do, and how I can then make that available to others who don't know it exists or it's not available to them. How do I make this happen? Max Debiso Atkins Climate Ambassador Program is the program for you. So I put the link in there, so there's no need, and I will be sharing the slides with Elmer. Please do stop me if you have any questions. I would love for this to be interactive, considering we're such a small group. Now, again, just to feed into the end game of this whole session, understanding where we fit in as the Seychelles in terms of education on climate change and how it's embedded within our system, and the need for there to be a communal education platform, I think, for the continent, where there is a lot of sharing. I think peer-to-peer sharing, I think, is where the aim is here. I'd like to go on to the African Youth Union Climate Change Youth Negotiators Program. So Um, when I applied for this one, Um, the intent here was to learn as much as possible about the UNFCCC negotiations system. The thing about it is, you can learn as much as you want, you can read as much as you want, but if you cannot implement it, the knowledge then becomes nothing. It's like that verse in the Bible that tells you light a candle, but then you put it under a bowl. What use then is the candle? So when I applied to this one, the intent here was to be able then to use what you've learned from one session and all the proactiveness you've learned from one particular program rather. How do you then implement this at the global stage? So I was lucky enough to be one of the recipients from Seychelles. There were two of us, both from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but only myself attended this one. And what you do is the African Union will sponsor you. You will go to Bonn, and you will shadow your national focal point. So that will be your chief negotiator. And your before you even go into the sessions though, there are a series of trainings that you have to attend to understand the UNFCCC language, to be able to read the documentation, and then be able to participate as one of the party of your delegation. So this is my cohort, by the way. There's quite a number of us. And of course, we know the big man himself. He was very nice of him to also attend the preliminary sessions with us and give us quite a number of great advice. Again, as I said before, the purpose and capacity building of the whole program is, of course, technical knowledge, the UNFCCC negotiation skills, the practical experience, which you need to have. COPs and subsidiary body meetings can be quite extensive, and again, climate diplomacy. For Seychelles, one of the reasoning behind you are endorsed by your government, I should say, for this one, for the African Union youth negotiators, you must be endorsed by your government. In this case, the Ministry of Environment endorses us. So the aim here is to send a particular technician who has exhibited certain qualities that they're looking for a climate negotiator, and they are sent to Bonn to not only absorb and shadow the negotiators, but also distinctly find which nexus they can latch on to. So for myself, I was quite interested in climate finance and the global goals and adaptation. This is also ongoing for members of my cohort. A lot of them were interested in health, some of them in education, and others in and I think ocean governance. But all of these demonstrates why there is a need for there to be cross-ministerial and intra-university education systems, because you have to have different thematic experts from different thematic fields being able to contribute to the negotiations. And I think that's so important for Africa. We lack, I think, the expertise that's funneled then to actual climate negotiations so that we do have a common voice at continental level. So this is basically what we did. We had topics, specific topics in mentorship leading into Belém at the time. And one of them, of course, were the global goals and adaptation, how to then refine the indicators that we had. And we have a first-hand chance of seeing, okay, this is why the global north see it this way and continuously push back. And this is why the global south position it the same way they do it. And you also see how the different factions of the G77 have conflict with each other because of their specific issues. For small island developing states, we have particular issues that the LDCs might understand, but the larger AGN might not understand. So all of these were very important to understand the nuances and how then to build coalitions and to understand why some coalitions form for certain items of discussion and others are not. And this is very important also for the Seychelles, and as for all African states, especially, as I said, as relates to education, because then you know which gaps exist at university level, at secondary level, at primary level in terms of education, which can then be transmuted into that. So just a little bit of us at the negotiations at the time. Very, very long hours, but very, very fruitful. So I should probably say we were the first cohort this time around. There's 5 people that are chosen to represent not your country, but the region. So for myself, I'm representing the Eastern African region. So even though I can contextualize Seychelles, I can understand it intimately. One of the main reasons why the AUC has done this is for you to be able to understand Africa as a continent is very, very diverse. Within a country, you can have multiple geographic representations. And it's important to understand then why national policy is the way that it is and why there are some policies that go through and why some policies that do not go through. And again, for us here at university level, education level, this is one of those things that you have to learn how to do or how to identify rather to be able to really understand where we stand at the global stage and why we have conflicts sometimes in terms of dealing with policy in the UNFCCC. So again, like I said, because this is the first cohort, the intention here is to have at least 500 people plus who are youth negotiators now, but then become or replace rather the negotiators that are aging out of the system. We don't stay young forever, so it's important to sustainably fuel human resources as well. Which leads me to the Seychelles National Climate Change Youth Negotiators Program. Um, I would like to say, when we speak about education and when we speak about universities, Pan-African universities, or even universities from islands, regardless of whether or not they are small island developing states or just islands, for example, I would like to take the Philippines in this instance. It's very, I think, significant to note that whatever challenge one particular state is experiencing, there's a huge possibility that another state is also experiencing the same. They might not be in the same categorization of development, but there are some portions of, or regions rather, of their countries that are facing similar constraints. And by constraints, I don't just mean environmental, I also mean in terms of capacity, in terms of development aid, in terms of access to climate finance, in terms of institutional credibility, institutional strength. We have commonalities. And one of the main challenges in the Seychelles, like I said before, is that we also have these institutional challenges in that the institutions are strong. The institutions in Seychelles are particularly strong. There is incredible transparency and there's a level of accountability that's always being gauged by the National Assembly. However, because the Seychelles is dealing with a number of conflicting priorities, national priorities, all demanding equal energy, and considering our very small amount of human resources, I saw when I was in Bonn that we have here an issue of an aging population, um, a number of people who have been in certain positions, but they're in their 50s going on 60s, which is not a bad thing. It's just not sustainable. It is not a sustainable thing. You must have expertise, but you must have expertise that is also able to trickle down. So, with the intent of bridging that gap, not only to ensure that, oh, when we do go into negotiation platforms at an international level, we have a number of youth delegation. And when I say youth, I don't mean young people. I mean the people who are actually part of the workforce, but are just categorized as part of the youth membership in the UN. So people aged up to 35, I think it's going up to 40 in some places. But you have to have these people specifically for the intent of sustainable human resource. Um, so this was the intent, and the idea here was Seychelles, like a lot of African states or developing states, we are labeled as a high income country, but that's on paper. That we have a high debt to GDP ratio, such that the majority of the money that we do make per year, the GDP, goes to debt swap. Like it has to go to returning debt from the countries that we've received funding from, and a lot of it is just national infrastructural projects. And the majority of our GDP I saw was going towards building infrastructure to be resilient to climate change. And then we go to the negotiation platforms like the UNFCCC, we go to the UNSG, we go to the AOSIS meetings, we go to the Our Ocean Conference, we go to the Ocean Summit. And we don't have people who have the skills. Basically, we have one expert that's coming in and negotiating, but they don't have the skills. So the intent here was to bring the trainers to the Seychelles rather than having to fund the Seychelles to go to the trainers, because we just don't have that kind of capacity in terms of financing. So hence came the National Climate Change Youth Negotiators Program, endorsed by the Environment Department. I was very happy that the minister was very on board, and now we have trained so far 12 ministerial experts from the Education Department, Health Department. We have a few engineers. I think one of them is a pilot as well. So all of them with their specific expertise that then trickles down to how we navigate international negotiations. Now, I would like to say then how this trickles into Seychelles and how we've managed to make sure that climate change is at every level of our society and also at education level. So we'll start with the University of Seychelles. Seychelles, of course, has a university, and they have courses which include climate change nexuses in them. Just wanted to briefly show you all. So this is the University of Seychelles, the website here. And finding a course is very, very easy. But one of the things that I wanted to mention is about the programs that they have. Almost all of the program, whether it's computer science or it's business administration, has some elements of climate resilience in them, specifically because you cannot have business administration without understanding the risks of climate change. Similarly, for computer science, considering the rise of AI, how then does that translate into water use or cybersecurity for a country like ours, also at the nexus of climate change? For travel and tourism economics, you cannot, again, separate that from climate changes that we have with the oceans, coral bleaching, disaster, increased disaster. All of it is embedded within that. So that's one thing that the Seychelles has been very brilliant in doing. We also have the Sea of Seychelles. This one is the largest youth-based advocacy mechanism that we have in the Seychelles. They've been very, very active. They actually spearheaded the no plastics in the Seychelles years and years ago, and they also give workshops not just to the youth. Really, they give workshops to people in government. They give workshops to private partnerships. They've given advocacy trainings, consultations to international organizations working in the Seychelles to educate them on RE environmental impact assessments, quite a number of things, and they've been incredibly supportive of quite a number of developments that have happened here. So I think this is their website. Again, they're very, very on top of getting things accessible to the public as relates to climate change. So just not just at education at young people level, but also at workforce level. Cross-ministerial training. This is one thing that I really wanted to point out for the Seychelles. Like, this is the Ministry of Environment, by the way. And what you have here is different departments that you have, but at the bottom, what you'll have most of the time, let me just see if I can see it. But yes, you'll have all the initiatives that exist that are made very readily available, not just, it's open source knowledge. So that's another thing that's really good about us here, is the fact that we have all of this information readily available to the public, especially when you have researches to be provided or to be undertaken. So Seychelles is very on top of that one. Public-private partnerships, similarly, we have the Civil Association, and the website is also very user-friendly, I find. Let me see if I can find it here. Oh, I think I might have, well, either way, I will be sharing it with you, so it's completely fine. But all of them work in tandem with each other. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to mention all four of these, is because they don't operate only within themselves, but they contribute to one another. So there are a lot of stakeholder engagements that happen here. So this is where the Seychelles is at in terms of making sure that regardless of whether or not we have certain challenges where there is a lack of communication, or sometimes you'll find ministries operating on their strategies and not informing another ministry who also has a stake in it on their strategies, they have made, or rather we have made immense quite immense progress in making sure that at each nexus of society, whether it's civil society, private, public, government, education, there is cross collections of information being shared to make sure that at least there is some synergy or complementariness in the way we approach climate change.